All right, I want to welcome everyone back to the channel. I'm excited today to have our special guest on, Tia from Tia TX. If you aren't already subscribed to her channel, make sure you go and subscribe. The link will be in the description. She teaches you everything that you need to know about Etsy, Redbubble, and more. So grateful to have you here, Tia. If you just want to go ahead and tell us about yourself and how you got started with doing print on demand.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brennan. So I'm a medical student right now. I started the whole passive income journey when I was around 15, 16. I started selling my revision notes on a website called tes.com and managed to make some money with that. So from then on, I was just interested in building more passive income streams and really got hooked on this idea of passive income. So the next thing I did was Shopify dropshipping. I went quite deep into that for about a year. And it didn't really work out that well for me because it was my first experience making money online, like e-commerce business. So ended up making a loss actually. But I learned a lot of things from that, such as navigating the sales funnel and advertising, SEO, all of those really important skills that you need to do run an e-commerce business. And then after that, I took a break for a while, focused on studies, that kind of thing, and then came back to it. So I started doing print on demand, and the first print on demand website I was on was Redbubble. So I managed to make some sales with that, and then I feel like I've sort of grasped the algorithm on Redbubble, and then moved on to Etsy and more websites such as TeePublic, and now I'm selling on my own Shopify store as well. So it's just been quite a long time doing this kind of thing, and I just wanted to give back by talking about it on my YouTube channel, because YouTube is basically where I learned most of the things I know about running an e-commerce business. So yeah, it's just fun to sort of give back in that way.
Cool. So you've bounced around quite a bit. What would you say one of your most favorite platforms is to sell on currently?
Yeah, so my favorite platform would be probably Shopify, because it feels like I'm building my own brand. But I did quite like Etsy for a while, even though I would say I'm making the most on Redbubble, but it's not as enjoyable as the others because it doesn't feel, it's very transactional relationship. It doesn't feel like you're getting much contact with the customer, whereas on Etsy, they send you a lot of messages, and on Shopify, it's your own brand. So yeah.
Cool. So you're familiar with both Etsy and Redbubble. How is Redbubble different for people who aren't familiar with selling on Redbubble? Like for people that are just selling on Etsy right now, what makes Redbubble different from Etsy?
Okay, so the way I use Redbubble right now is more of a testing platform, because it's sort of different from back in the day where I was trying to figure out the algorithm and trying to just make money. But now I use it as sort of a filter for what I put on Etsy. And then I use Redbubble and Etsy as a filter for what I put on my Shopify store and what I invest time and money into, and possibly hire graphic designers for, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would say that if you're doing well on Etsy, you'll probably find Redbubble quite easy in terms of the whole system, because you don't even have to talk to the customers, and they ship everything out for you. You don't have to connect a production partner, and they have a market already. So logistics wise, it's going to be much easier for you. But I feel like Redbubble is much more competitive than Etsy because of such a low barrier of entry. So yeah, you just have to learn the SEO and what sells on each platform, I guess.
Cool.
Same for any
So,
platform, really.
all right. Are the margins pretty slim on Redbubble compared to Etsy? Because Etsy,
Yeah.
you have a lot of play in what you price your
Mhm.
products at. And how is it on Redbubble margins wise?
Yeah, so the way you do it on Redbubble is each product has a base cost, and then you can adjust the price, the margin for each different product.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, you start off at a 20% margin, that's like the baseline, and then you can increase it to like 22%, but for things like stickers, you would probably increase it to like 200%, because they're quite cheap. But then I would say that the things on Redbubble are really overpriced, in my opinion. So it's harder to make, even though you can decide your own profit margin, it is harder to make a sale if your profit margin is, if you're deciding on too high of a percentage. So that's sort of why I moved on to Etsy as well, because it's much more flexible in terms of profits.
Okay, interesting. And are you mostly doing clothing, stickers, or
Yeah,
a
so
little bit of everything?
my best-selling product on Etsy is coffee mugs right now, followed by t-shirts. So I mainly designed for t-shirts, but it was quite interesting to see that coffee mugs were selling well. I also sell stickers on Etsy, So anything that sells well on Redbubble, I just put on Etsy, and obviously on Redbubble, stickers are the main thing that sell. So I just sort of filter it through that way.
Cool. Very cool. So you mentioned you're in med school. From my understanding, I've never been in med school, but I'm sure it takes a lot of time and almost more time than a full-time job. I know a lot of people, like a lot of our community who are watching, they are working during the day, a full-time job, 9 to 5 job, and then they're doing print on demand in the evenings. How do you manage to balance your time to how are you more efficient with your time? What are some of your tricks for doing that to balance both?
Yeah, you definitely learn things over time. So when I first started, it was not as efficient as I am now. But basically, like our course is structured 6 years, and the first 2 years is really heavy, intense science. You're supposed to learn like all the science that you need to know for clinical studies. So that was really intense, and I wasn't able to do much in terms of passive income during those years. But then now I'm in third year, so that's a bit more flexible where you get to choose your specialty. So right now I'm doing pharmacology, and that's more essay based. So I've had a lot more time to focus on the things that I'm doing on the side. And probably my biggest tip would just be to use the spare like moments of time that you have during the day. So for example, if you're waiting in a lunch queue or something, then I'll just like pull out my phone and do some Redbubble research or see what's trending on Etsy. And that those like little bits of time really add up, especially if you're have a 9 to 5 job or if you're doing something else. You need to be able to like squeeze out those little bits of time in between.
Very cool. I love that tip because I think it's so easy if you're just waiting in line or on the bus or whatever it is to just scroll through social media or just waste time. But if
Yeah,
you're able
exactly.
to really discipline yourself and focus on trend research or even designing, now there's so many apps that you can design with like GoDaddy Studio or Canva app. You can easily design on the go in between. So awesome tip. So shifting over to Etsy, Tia, if there's a new seller on Etsy for any new beginner, what would be your top 3 tips you would share for a new seller to have success on Etsy right now?
Yeah, so the three most common questions I get asked are probably about SEO, and also suspensions, account suspensions, and the accounting side of things. So the costs and fees. Why is my price not aligning up with this price and stuff like that? So for SEO, I would say like I use a tool called Sales Samurai. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but
Mhm.
it's like Marmalade, eRank, those kind of tools. But it has a few more features such as a calendar and like a Chrome extension. So I really like that tool. And it's helped in terms of like choosing which keywords, because you sort of roughly know which keywords you're going to put in, but like in which order in the title, and which 13 tags you want to choose. So that helps me decide. It's not really a massive factor, I think. Like as I said, Redbubble is kind of a filter, so I just put up random stuff on Redbubble, see what sells, and then what sells on there I put on Etsy. So that is the main way I do it. I also look on what's trending on Etsy, and what's trending on Amazon as well. Amazon merch. I actually haven't been able to get into Amazon merch, but because you need to apply, and I got rejected like several times. But what's trending on there often sells well on Etsy as well.
Hmm. Interesting. Do you think it's like do or die? You have to have a e or a tool like an SEO tool like Sales Samurai or eRank in order to be competitive with your SEO?
No,
Or could
absolutely not. So
no, okay.
I started off not using any paid tools at all, and I managed to get sales. And then after I got sales, I sort of invested that into paid tools. So I definitely think like it does help. It just helps like the final decision between, do I put this word first in my title, or do I put this tag in here or not? But it's not. Yeah, I feel like what sells for you is the best indicator of what is going to help scale your business.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. So, meaning like if you have a specific design that's selling well, throw it on other products or tweak it slightly to improve upon that design, but same concept. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the way I do it is sort of like a testing and scaling kind of thing, which is something I've learned from Shopify dropshipping. But it's basically where I just throw up a bunch of designs that I think might sell, and then for me, it's like about 1 in 10 designs that sell on Redbubble. So it is quite competitive. But the things that sell on Redbubble for me, I know will probably sell well on Etsy, because Etsy has a bigger market. And then if they sell on both platforms, then I'll put it on my Shopify store.
Interesting. So after talking with you for just a few minutes, I feel like you're big kind of your big advice you have is experimenting. You have to experiment and then filter and then apply what is currently working, which I think is
Yeah,
super
absolutely.
valid.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's the most efficient use of your time because you could just be looking for different niches every single day and trying to upload a lot of different designs. But then I think like the best way to maximize your time is to test and see what works and then just keep uploading what works. And
Yeah.
that's where you scale.
Very cool. With that too, I feel like a lot of people will I get a lot of questions will say like I've been on Etsy for a few weeks now. I haven't had a sale yet. Why haven't I had any sales? But I think it is just a matter of time. It takes a lot of time to start to gain momentum and a lot of time to start experimenting before you really start to see any type of success. So I guess my thoughts from my experience and kind of what you've shared is you have to be patient and you have to just always be willing to put in the work and to always be experimenting in order to see any type of success. But awesome advice. Um, Last few questions I have for you, Tia, is in 2022 or at the end of the year, do you think 2022 there's still opportunity to start doing print on demand to keep with it, or do you think it's oversaturated? What are your thoughts and predictions for this coming year?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the most common questions I get is, do you think print on demand is too competitive because there's so many sellers doing it? And overall, it is getting a lot more competitive. It is harder to make sales now than before. Like if you started like 5 years ago, obviously, but um, individual niches are always popping up. So you can't be the first to print on demand, but you can be the first to an individual niche. So that is how I've been able to sort of build and scale multiple Redbubble stores, two Etsy stores now, and I've been able to start them from scratch like recently and build them because I'm always looking for niches that are trending currently. So yeah, look around for trends, and then once you sort of get some momentum on your store, you can then start thinking about evergreen niches.
Cool. So still opportunity. So don't miss out on the opportunity.
Definitely.
Cool. I love it. Any last thoughts or inspiration or tips you want to share, Tia?
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time, really, as you said, and just keep at it. Like the results won't be consistent. Well, not just at first, but it never will be consistent. But if you put in consistent work, then the income should increase. Like as long as you know what you're doing at the beginning, it's just a matter of putting in the work.
Cool. Put in the work. Love it. I have one more question for you.
Sure.
Because I know you dominate in the Redbubble space and you love selling on Redbubble. Most of my community, most of them, from what I gather, is they're selling on Etsy. Would you recommend people who are currently selling on Etsy to diversify and start selling on Redbubble and experimenting like what's working on Etsy, as you mentioned, go and try those on Redbubble, or to not spread yourself too thin and just focus only on Etsy?
Yeah. So I think the thing about Redbubble is Etsy is pretty notorious for suspending people out of the blue.
Mhm.
And I've had a lot of people comment that they've been suspended. So I would definitely recommend you diversify. Whereas if you want to go on Redbubble, then you might find it a bit easier, but in terms of logistics, because you don't have to talk to customers, so everything's done for you. Basically, you just have to upload and then see the income rolling in. But it's sort of not as efficient in the way that Merch by Amazon is because it's more competitive and there's not as big a market, so it's a lot more niche. I think Redbubble. So yeah, I would say like just be aware that it's more competitive if you do want to diversify, which would be a good idea. But things that sell on Etsy won't necessarily sell on Redbubble, whereas things that sell on Redbubble usually sell on Etsy for me, in my experience.
Interesting. Cool. Well, Tia, well, thank you so much for being on the channel today. Make sure you guys go and check out her channel. The link is in the description and subscribe to her content because she's putting out content on Etsy and Redbubble as well as much more. So thank you, Tia. Excited to see more content that you put out.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.